are streaming live on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and on Twitch. Today we have Chris Gannon. Ruben, if you can open up the windows here. I'd like Chris to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about who you are and tell us about your company as well. Welcome to the show and welcome all the rest of the hosts.
Hey guys, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. I think we planned this back in October, November, and it felt like it was forever away, and I guess today's the day. My name's Chris Gannon. I'm the founder of a company called Captivate Talent. We're based here in Midtown Manhattan, as you can see the lovely gray January weather we're having. I've spent about the last 15 years now in the world of recruitment. I started with a large multinational recruitment firm for the first half of my career, and then decided I wanted to shake it up a little bit and had that millennial itch, and moved into the startup world, where I had 2 stints as a director of talent with high velocity startups. And then, after I learned that I really love building things, I made the decision in my life to start Captivate Talent to try to bring a better experience out to the recruiting world. It's our 3rd year now in business, and I'm excited to be here.
Well, welcome to the show, Chris. I've yet to hear of a low-velocity startup. I'm looking forward to someone actually mentioning that someday. But tell us a little bit about Captivate. What prompted you to start this? What gave birth to it? What are you all about? Tell us about your business a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of, everything happens for a reason, and the moves I've made in my career kind of all culminated for me to start Captivate Talent. I realized once I went internally and worked for these startups and I was representing one brand, that there were a lot of things that were really important that the agency recruiting world didn't have. Things like candidate experience, making sure you're always working with brand integrity. So I started Captivate to try to merge the world of really, sharp agency recruiting experience where you're offering a high level of service to clients, but also making sure that we offer that high level of service to candidates. And I spent a long time specifically working around the revenue parts of businesses. So starting Captivate, it was a natural fit for us to focus on revenue positions, which sales, marketing, customer success, anything that's really touching the revenue channel. And then furthermore, I realized that lots of these growth stage tech companies, they were the ones that were hurting. Uber doesn't need help recruiting. Coca-Cola doesn't need help recruiting. The startup that hasn't gotten their Series A funding, they need help beyond just resumes getting put in their door. They need somebody that's going to kind of hold their hand and walk them through how to structure an interview process, how to prompt candidates with the right types of questions that get the answers that they're really looking for, and how to make sure that through their processes that they're making sure that their brand has strong integrity and they're not leaving a bad name on the market too.
Great. Kim, will you please introduce the topic of the show today, and let's get right into it. I know Chris is excited to talk about something that we all care about, something that impacts culture and people. So Kim, if you don't mind, please introduce the topic that Chris has chosen today.
Sure, of course, and thank you very much. So the topic today is why being human and candidate experience is the most important part of growing your company. So here we already talked a bit, and Chris, I think, touched on this idea of the candidate experience, which maybe we tend to forget about as companies, and this idea of being human. And I wanted to get us started with the being human elements. Chris, if you could share with us what exactly that means.
So I have to give credit. The last company, I was at a company called Reward Gateway as their head of talent, and one of their values was be human. And it resonated with me so much that when I started Captivate Talent, I emailed the CEO and I actually asked him if I could borrow his value for my company. He gladly said that was a great idea, and he was more than happy to lend it to me. But what being human's about in the world of recruiting, which not only, to be honest, us as recruiters in the agency world, we forget about it a lot too. And the thing I think we have to remember is that I think that there's 3 major decisions that people make throughout their lifetime, where they're going to live, who their partner is going to be, and where they're going to work, that impact their life every day. And as recruiters or as hiring managers, we have to realize that we are playing with one of those major decisions that's going to impact somebody's life every time we get on an interview, every time we make somebody a job offer, or every time we maybe reject somebody from a job interview. So I think recognizing how important that is needs to tie into how we have to treat that more like a human process, less like a business transaction.
And so it sounds to me a lot like this idea of empathy, like being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes a bit more often than we might naturally or tend to do that, which is with the hustle and the bustle, what it means to be a recruiter.
Yeah, I mean, recruiters are almost trained lots of the times to look at these processes like transactions, to take the human element out of it. And it's really good if you're focused on bottom line revenue. It's a great trait to have. But I think the world of recruitment and, we see business as a whole being so digitized and automated. I think we forget about the personal aspects of it. So, kind of flipping that theory on its head and going in the other directions actually lent itself to a lot of our success that we've experienced as a company so far. Because actually just making that little shift in outlook has made everyone asks us what our differentiator is or what our USP is. Mm-hmm. That's actually one of our major USPs is just being human. And that's
nice.
It might sound surprising sometimes. But.
So do you have some examples of what you've learned along your way? Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I visualize there's sort of three main components of what it means to recruit or to grow your company. And that first you have to attract people, then you actually have to hire the people, and then you have to retain the people, right? You have to get them to stay. So yeah. So what are examples of this being human that you've applied or companies can apply in those three areas? And is there one particular area that's more important than the other?
So if you look at the recycling graph where it's a big circle and the arrows all kind of point to each other, I think you could take attract, hiring, and retaining and do the same thing. The arrows all kind of lead around to each other and continue a circle. So starting with like attracting talent, you have to be thoughtful in your approach. If you're even building a job description and it's something that you just ripped off another company and it doesn't, kind of express who you are, what your values are, what you're trying to accomplish as a team, like just that little thing, you're just missing around the mark. So humanizing things like job descriptions, they shouldn't read like, here is your list of duties. It should, and we post them all the time, and that's not what we use personally to attract talent, and that's what a lot of companies use. I mean, a list of job duties, nobody got excited about processing sales orders as needed. Like, that's not getting anyone out of that.
Right.
So, what's your mission? What are you trying to accomplish? Who's the right type of person that you're looking for? Build your want and make it evoke passion that you have as a founder or a business owner or a hiring manager. So, humanizing attraction is really important. Hiring, should be almost self-explanatory. How do you want to be treated in an interview process? Are you being conscious of that and treating this other person like that too? Are you rejecting candidates in a human way, or are you sending them an automated email? Did somebody do 3 rounds of interviews and you're just not getting them back to them? That's kind of the important stuff that you have to realize on the hiring side too.
So I'm curious, hey guys, whoever's got the background going, please mute yourself. Thank you. So I'm curious, Chris, how much does culture of an organization have to do with how this happens, right? So I think companies spend a lot of time focusing on the customer experience, the external experience that in terms of how a customer perceives the brand and the relationship they're going to have for that brand. But many fail to actually do the same for employees, right? I mean, instead of treating them as cogs or assets or resources, if they were given the same value, if even more value in terms of the experience you want to create, the similar that the investment you make with customers, how much of that is just an issue of culture, and how much, in your experience, does culture have to change in order to be more effective in creating a better experience for the candidate when they first come on, and of course for the employees once they're on board?
Yeah, I think I could try to repackage this as this nice, cool, insightful, original answer that I could think of. But I mean, Richard Branson said it the best: if you take care of your employees, they take care of your customers. That couldn't be more true in the business world. I mean, if you're building a company, if you are trying the hardest you can with the resources you have to make sure your employees are happy and they feel like they're taken care of, they will go to the ends of the earth for you. If you're nickel and diming everything from the employee experience to try to invest money in the customer experience, there's going to be a broken process there. And if your customer success team's understaffed because you don't want to hire more people, but you want to give them every tech tool possible, like, they're still not going to be able to take care of your customers. So I think culture is the lifeblood of a company, and it's a responsibility of founders, leaders, CEOs, whatever they might be, to take care of those people and to build that company.
So how does your company help organization better prepare for that? What do you guys do to influence a change so that you can create a better experience for the candidates?
Yeah, so it's really we want to walk them through best practices first off. We want to tell them, here's what the best companies in your industry are doing. Here's the things that you can kind of maybe do for free. Here's the things that you could do, like little wellness things and mindset changes that help build a better internal structure. Here's things that you could do in the interview and hiring process where, everyone thinks about retention being post-hire. It's actually all done in the interview. If you're interviewing for the right kind of attributes, and if you're interviewing for culture the right way, that's how you make sure your retention's going to be aligned well. If you're just thinking about retention post-hire after you have somebody, you're thinking about it too late. So we try to teach companies that doing everything on the front end makes for a really happy back end.
Laura, I think you had a question, Laura.
Yes, Chris. So my question is, what do you think of hire for attitude, train for skills?
Yeah, I think that's really important. I half agree with that. I advise our clients always to interview for culture or attitude on the front end, because if you don't do that until the end, you can get really excited about somebody's skill set and then almost bypass the culture part of the interview. I've seen it happen where a VP of sales overrides HR because they don't care about culture because it's such a good salesperson. Well, what happens once that person gets hired, they actually become toxic in the environment because no one checked for culture. So if you hire for that attitude or culture in the beginning, you'll make sure that you ensure that you have the right people. Training for skills, I do agree that you should always look into somebody's potential, but we see jobs becoming more and more specialized. Lots of our clients only pay us, as you can imagine, for people who meet those criteria for that specialization. But everyone needs to start somewhere, so you should always hire for attitude and culture first.
So when it comes, one of these questions, I think it's hard. Culture is something that sometimes is less tangible, right? Here at Nearsoft, we have our company values such as long-term relationships and commitment, leadership, teamwork, and be smart, get things done. Those are the 5 values that we stand by, and those are the 5 values that we look for in our candidates and the people that we wish to join our team. But I find that sometimes, we're a tech company, we're a software development company, and it's maybe easier to identify where somebody is at on the skill level and a bit more challenging to identify where they are at on that fit level or that culture level. So what types of information or tips, I guess, or questions, what should we be doing as interviewers to try to find and tap in to those values that we're looking for? Like, is there a structure or a process of the types of questions we should be asking?
Yeah, so every company should have, ours, I put right behind us today, they should have their values written down and they should be somewhere where everyone can see them. So if you don't have that set up yet, like you need to get in a room with your leadership team and you need to create them, build them, and agree on them. And then what you need to do is you need to take each of those values and say, how do we build questions to test for these values? A really good recruiter that's been in the game for a while will actually say, all right, stay positive is one of your values. How do you ask a really good question to test for that value? Maybe it's in an interview, you're asking the candidate, tell me about a time where it was really difficult for you in the work environment or something didn't go your way. How did you navigate through that? And you're kind of testing for that answer about, did they stay positive? Did they talk about, did they need to have conflict resolution? How did they work out with that at the end of the day? And I think the important thing is the interviewing team needs to agree on what a good answer looks like and what a bad answer looks like. So it's really when you build those values and you create those values, then you take that and incorporate it into your interview process and build questions around it.
Chris, what do you think of some of the assessment tools like DISC, or I think Gallup has one as well? I can't remember the name now, but are those effective in identifying some of those, emotional intelligence type skills that we're talking about? Or is there something that's out there that works better? What have you seen so far?
So I think they're really smart tools. And I think they're sold and used in the wrong way. It drives me crazy when somebody goes, oh, they scored like this on the DISC, and so we're not going to move forward. Those tools, anybody who's selling those tools in the right way will tell you that they are used to benchmark and to drive further, deeper questioning in the interview process. So when somebody gives a DISC assessment at the end of the interview process, you already know they're using it wrong. Those tools are great to use at the beginning of a process and then help hiring managers dive deeper into certain areas that they want to drill down into. I see their value and I do like them from a recruiter standpoint, but I often see them misused. So unless somebody's willing to commit to training and learning on how to use them the correct way, I don't think they should belong in the interview process. You can't just download that tool and throw it in and then give somebody a score after that.
Yeah, so I would think a lot of companies use these tools as just, for efficiency. But what I'm hearing is, if you really want to create the right experience, you've got to invest in developing a process that's unique to you, that digs into the questions that are going to be relevant to what you're trying to discover. And it can't just be, just a skill set type of thing. It's got to be personal, based on values and things of that sort. Here's what I'm curious about. A lot of the systems, what is that system called? The ATS, when you submit, right? Are they looking for those emotional intelligent type skills? They're not tracking that, are they? So is it flawed already as it is in terms of actually identifying the right candidate who might be perfect in terms of being able to contribute to the culture, being able to be a valuable contributor and person in the organization, but didn't fit into the, quote unquote questionnaire or mold, if you will, of those systems? What are your thoughts on that? Does that need to just be scrapped, or does it need to be improved? What are your thoughts?
So it's in the recruiting world, they're like, AI is coming. AI is really good at matching keywords, and it's really bad at figuring out emotional intelligence. It's really bad at figuring out personality. It's really bad at figuring out all these things beyond just a resume. So I think it goes back almost to like the DISC profiles and everything, where there are really good tools out there. They're often misused as a quick fix and not implemented in the right way, in the correct way to dive deeper into a person, who a person really is.
So here's what I'm hearing, and I've said this before because I've caught myself doing it. Choose relationship over efficiency. I have caught myself many times in terms of just choosing efficiency, being very efficient with my time and to the point. And what often happens is you sacrifice relationship. And I'm hearing that what's more important is to focus on the relationship. And not enough companies are doing that from the get-go, and certainly not doing that once the candidate is on board. So what are some of the best practices that leaders can put in place to change that, to reinvest in those relationships? Because the experience is all about the relationship, right?
It's one of the qualifying questions we ask new clients and hiring managers is how much time do you actually have to dedicate to this process? How much time do you have to dedicate to interviewing? And if they're looking in their calendar 3 weeks out and trying to find an hour slot, they're not prepared to make hires, because it is about building relationships through interview processes. Really good recruiters don't need as many tools for a reason. It's because they've built a network, they've built relationships, and people trust them. It's actually, I admittedly will tell anyone that our outbound sales process sucks. It's terrible. Captivate Talent as a business is almost 100% referral driven from a client aspect. Almost all of our clients are referred to us because we really try to focus on building relationships with actual people, not just doing automated email drips or sponsoring some ads here or there. We do that kind of stuff just kind of because we have to sometimes, but it's not really that valuable for us.
Well, I think going back to this idea of the relationship versus the efficiency, one of the techniques that we use always, not always, it is always at Nearsoft, is this idea of the collective process, the collective interviewing. I know that this might not be something that's possible for the smaller companies, the startups, but collectively, do we find that it's your opinion that it's great that the recruiting team is relying on other members of the community of the company to be involved in that process and to help make decisions? It's something that for us at Nearsoft works really, really well, but I'm interested on your take.
100%. The multiple people in and outside of a department should be involved in interviewing. But I think something that has to be really thoughtful on the beginning before you start that process, before you even put that job out there, who has what role in the interviewing process? Is this person interviewing for culture? Is this person interviewing for skill? Is this person interviewing for job fit? You have to really define those roles so you know what's happening in each step of the interview process, and you're getting the same. There's not different variables for each candidate. If a different person's going in there and asking different sets of questions, how can you possibly assess a candidate correctly across the board without biases? So I think you have to be really careful when you're bringing in different departments or teams or team members, but it should be done. You just have to define what each person is doing and what each department is doing in that process.
Thank you. The idea of making sure that the process is well defined and the roles are well defined.
And the questions are written out beforehand, and everyone's asking those same five questions or 10 questions.
How would you get the idea if it's a company that is quite popular and if they're those same 5 questions? Does it matter much if those questions get leaked? Like, what if the candidate already knows what's coming?
Glassdoors are really good at that, which, a candidate could prepare for, as much as they want, but if you're assessing those answers, people will eventually show their true personality. So those bigger companies, they usually have more robust interview processes for a reason. So if somebody's going into a 6-round interview process at Uber, not every question is going to be leaked, but maybe the top 3 or 4 are. They probably have 10, 20, 30 other questions that they ask through that process, though.
Well,
right, and so the layers.
Yeah. I guess it comes down to experience, and just in some cases, it's just using the wisdom you've developed over the years to see through the nonsense. Sometimes you just have to use that gut experience too, I would think. I think Laura had another question about what happens after you hire people.
Yeah, I get a question. So, Chris, how do you get new hires to engage to a company?
So, once somebody's hired, I think, it's something I even struggle here with myself is the onboarding process. Especially for smaller companies, onboarding, there's not this big HR department that's just going to give them a nice packet for onboarding and they're going to sit in training class 101 on week one. So, that goes into how much time do you have to hire. Hiring doesn't stop once the offer is made. It bleeds into that person's first month, 2 months, 6 months. Like, what is your onboarding process? And if you are Googling onboarding process the day before somebody starts, you don't have one yet. And it might be okay to do that the first time, but then you have to build off of that and make sure that when somebody starts, you set them up for success as best as possible. You give them all the tools they need.
I really like this. I'm sorry. I just do have one question, and I know it's probably opening a big can of worms because it's a big question. But going back to this idea of retention starts at the hiring process, and then we discussed a little bit about the onboarding process, which helps lead to better retention as well. But something that I've noticed, particularly it seems in the tech industry right now, is this shift from a lot of companies no longer being brick and mortar, like this attempt to decrease or eliminate overhead costs, and now they're opting for more remote environments. And a nice, I guess, fallout or afterthought of that is this ability to pay more. But how can companies who still want to stick to that brick and mortar and have these overhead costs, who can't necessarily compete with the same level of pay, still retain their employees?
Well, I don't see that as competition as much because, some employees might be really happy sitting on their couch or their home office every day, and that being their work environment, where there's a lot of people out there that just doesn't work for. So I think they are, first of all, those companies are going after two slightly different talent pools, and the people that could do both, I don't necessarily see pay go that much higher for remote people. Sometimes I actually see it lower, where we have clients like here in New York that will pay somebody lower than what they would in New York because the cost of living is so much cheaper somewhere else. So we don't encounter that side of it that much often, but I do understand how, companies that have less overhead, maybe they are able to increase pay a little bit more, but maybe they also lose out on things like they're never able to have a team happy hour, or if they have an offsite, they have to fly everyone to a central location or whatever it might be.
Well, it sounds like you have to figure out what your values are and and based on that, hire people that also match that up, right? So it always comes down to culture and what you're trying to accomplish. We're up on time. If anybody has any additional questions, otherwise, I'd love to get some final words of wisdom from Chris. Any tips you'd like to give? Any founders of startups that have been struggling perhaps to find good candidates and holding on to them? Any words of wisdom you'd like to share with them that they can take away?
Yeah, I think one of the most important parts is hiring's not easy. Hiring's not easy for anyone. There's a lot of learnings that you could have from it. Make sure you're always evolving and learning through your process. But if you're having trouble, actually do start out by saying, is my process human? Did I get back to those last 5 people I rejected? Am I responding to people in a timely manner? Am I dedicating a few hours a day to this? Because you have to realize we're recruiters and we are full-time every single minute we're working dedicated to hiring for your company. So trying to do that on your own, you have to realize the amount of time and commitment it takes. And you just have to hold yourself to the highest level of integrity and treat people how you would want to be treated through that interview process. I think that's really important. If you start out by doing that, you'll actually start to separate yourself from everyone else that's out there doing things the wrong way.
Thanks, Chris. It kind of reminds me of like having a dinner party, right? And you invite your friends and you want them to have an amazing experience, and they show up and nothing's prepared, nothing's decorated, and you're like, let's figure this out. you know, that's
You're
an experience for anyone.
Yeah.
And it seems like a lot of companies, what they do, it's like, look, come on over and, you know, join us for this dinner party, but you know, bring your own fork. So it's the experience is an important aspect in everything in life, right? It's been a pleasure having you. Anything else, Carlos? What's coming up next week?
A conversation with. Hold on one second.
Go ahead.
Sorry, it was on mute. Right.
That's okay. That makes you consistent.
As usual. Right. John Zalzinger, and I hope I pronounced it right. Shunga John from Empowered D. So that's going to be happening. I don't have the topic yet. Maybe the guests have not sent it to me, but that's who we're going to be having next week. Same time here on Dojo Live, Wednesday, 1 p.m. Pacific. And I look forward to seeing you then.
Thanks, everyone.
Guys, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a great one. Bye-bye.
Bye.